We are going to start with the news of the day, and then we'll have Luke Johnson on in 15 minutes to talk about it a little bit further. But the Saints have agreed to terms with their quarterback of the future. He, of course, by now you know, is Derek Carr. I made my thoughts on this possibility pretty clear over the last couple of weeks. As this continued to gain steam, momentum, I pretty much told you where I stood on it. And so now that it's happened, you take a look at things a little bit further, and my thoughts haven't really changed. The Saints got better today. They got better. They had Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton, and they got Derek Carr. They got better. They're probably the favorites in the NFC South. I believe they got closer to winning the division. I don't believe they got materially closer to winning a championship, which is obviously very difficult to do. The best way I can put this acquisition is to put it into baseball terms. Bear with me here. Even those of you who are not big-time baseball fans are probably aware of the stat WAR, wins above replacement. Baseball uses it a ton. I can't even tell you exactly how it's concocted, but it stands for wins above replacement. And what that means is where you stand in relation to an average player in the league. If I were to give Derek Carr a WAR, it would be 0, which means he's exactly league average. What you get in Derek Carr is not what you're going to get from Mahomes or Burrow or Herbert or Allen, not what Jalen Hurts did this year. He's not in the elite class, but he's also a step up from Davis Mills or Matt Ryan, Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, Ryan Tannehill at this stage in his career. It's better than that, but it's not towards the top. My thoughts on adding Derek Carr to the Saints had less to do with his ability to play quarterback and more to do with putting together a roster financially. And we'll have Sharif on later in this week, and we'll talk about this, and he'll say the salary cap doesn't matter. It's a credit card. The Saints are going to manipulate it. They're still going to add players. Doesn't matter. And to an extent, he's right. They're great at moving money around. Some call it kicking the can down the road. Some say manipulating the cap. However you want to phrase it, they do it as intricately as anybody in the league. But I still believe when you add a player that you're guaranteeing $100 million over 4 years, that does take up a piece of a very real salary cap. And I'm looking at a Saints roster that has so many issues on the interior defensive line, at pass rusher, at running back, aging secondary. What's the offensive line going to look like? You've got so many issues that led to the mediocrity that was this season, and it just makes it more difficult to deal with those when you dump a $100 million quarterback in the middle of it. And it's not an exorbitant amount of money. They're paying what the going rate is for a quarterback. You start Andy Dalton, you don't have to pay that. You go get a real quarterback, you got to pay it. And they did. And this just confirms everything we know about this Saints front office and the way they've operated for the last 15 years. They are always pushing forward. Trading up in the draft to get players. Aggressively seeking free agent quarterbacks the last couple of years. There is no intention of ever taking a year off with this front office. Never a reset. Never a rebuild. Never a transition. It's just go, go, go. That's why they were all in on Deshaun Watson when we're looking at salary cap going, how does that work? That's why they're all in on Derek Carr, even though we look at the salary cap and go, how's this going to work? They are not going to go the route that I kind of suggested would probably be the best way, in my opinion, to building the next great Saints team, and that would be, okay, we got to chill. We got to sign Andy Dalton on the cheap. We've got to plug some holes in this roster. We might take it on the chin in 2023, and quite frankly, that might cost Dennis Allen his job, and then you move forward after that. That's the way I saw it. That was never the way the Saints were going to look at it. They were always going to do everything they could to be the best football team they can be this coming year. And in my opinion, they got better today. I don't think it's wise for the medium length term here. I don't think over the next 5 to 7 years, I don't believe that Derek Carr is the route to the next great Saints team. I think he's the route to make sure it doesn't go to 4-13. I don't think he's the best route to go to 14-3. That's my opinion on Derek Carr with the way this roster's put together. Maybe it helps you with Michael Thomas. You get him back, and maybe he's the player he once was. But to me, this just made things more difficult to create the roster around the quarterback spot. It makes the Saints more interesting to me, sports talk radio guy. They are very likely, in my opinion, a division favorite now. That makes football more interesting next fall. But it feels like a one-way ticket to getting dusted by San Francisco or whoever in the wild card round. That's what it feels like to me. I'm curious what the fan reaction is to this. In my group text where there's Saints fans, in Twitter world where there are Saints fans, by E4 chat where there are Saints fans, seems pretty tepid. It seems pretty tepid. But you do have a guy here in Derek Carr who throws for 4,000 yards a year. In 18, he threw for 4,000. In 19, he threw for 4,000. In 20, he threw for 4,100. In 21, he threw for 4,800 yards. And this past year, until he didn't play the last two games, he had thrown for 3,552. So if he'd have thrown for 250 a game over the last two, which is very realistic, he throws for 4,000 again. But you're talking about a 31-year-old guy who was playing last year with Devontae Adams, with Waller, one of the best tight ends in the league, Renfro. It was a pretty good team. They had some injuries along the way. Most do. And it wasn't every single day. Didn't have everybody. But it was a pretty good squad. And they were 6-9 with him. It just, again, they got better today. Did they get closer to a championship? I don't think so. And that's kind of what I'm in it for as a fan. I was in for the Cubs hitting the reset button, reshuffling the structure of the roster and the payroll, and making another push. And that took a couple of years of poor play to figure it out, which is not interesting and not fun. But I'd rather make a swing at going 14-3 and being a Super Bowl contender than, man, can we edge out the Falcons here? Can we just get over the hump with Carolina? That's what it feels like. And we'll see what they're able to do in free agency, but the most important thing for this 4-year run with Derek Carr on the roster, the most important thing is going to be these draft picks. They have got to get good players on the cheap, and the best way to do that is in the draft. They've got to draft well. And it doesn't appear that a quarterback's going to be on that menu. So you got to find a pass rusher in that first two rounds. You got to find interior, disruptive defensive linemen. You got to figure out what you're doing at the running back spot. Because quarterback's done now, and it's expensive. But the draft is going to be the biggest piece to this Saints organization now. It's been a mixed bag with this group. Some drafts have been on fire. Some have been total busts, and that's the nature of the game. But they have got to hit on draft picks moving forward with Derek Carr. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Hunt Palmer Show on YouTube. If you don't mind, throw us a like right below and hit the subscribe button. We'll see you next time.